In order to assert, as science does, or as most of science does, that consciousness or awareness is an emergent property of the brain, we would have to be able to find something called a brain prior to awareness having emerged out of it. And we would have to be able to say, look, there's the brain, awareness has not yet emerged out of it, and there, look, awareness has now appeared, the brain was present prior to awareness, and awareness emerged out of it. Now, has anybody, any scientist or psychiatrist, ever found a brain or a mind independent of or prior to awareness? It's just a yes or a no answer.
I don't know.
Well,
the question's turning over.
No, but that would be a good question to ask a scientist or a psychiatrist. Have you ever found a brain independent of awareness? Or to a psychiatrist, have you ever found a mind independent of awareness? The answer has to be no.
There are brains of people that are in vegetative states, and nobody really knows if there's any awareness there or not.
No, but that wasn't quite the question. The question is, it's simpler than that. Has anybody ever experienced a brain or a mind independent of awareness? Or we can go broader than this. Has anybody ever experienced, let's say, a world? Because to extrapolate what you're saying, we think that the mind, awareness comes out of the mind comes out of the brain is an emergent property of the body is an emergent property of the earth. So we actually, the earth is an emergent property of the universe, of time and space. We think time and space was here first, then the universe, then the world, then the body, then the brain, then the mind, and then this fragile, intermittent thing called awareness just appeared at the last minute. Yeah, but that's the model that most science is based on. Is that our experience? Has anybody ever found a mind, a brain, a body, a world, a universe, time or space independent of awareness?
No, but one could also reverse the question. Has anybody ever found
hang on.
awareness without having a brain?
Hang on. I'm addressing the belief, the prevalent belief that is wired into us, that is one of the founding principles upon which almost all our thoughts and feelings and subsequent activities and relationships take place. The belief that what I am, awareness, is a property of the mind, brain, body, world and universe. We think that the world was here first, independent of awareness. Has anybody ever found a world? Let's go bigger than just the mind or the brain. Has anybody ever experienced the world independent of awareness? Has anybody, any physicist, scientist?
But inherent in that question is the assumption that the body is aware. By saying, has anybody ever experienced that?
No, it's only awareness that is aware. But I'm making a concession to popular science, to conventional science, to the conventional point of view. It doesn't matter for this conversation what it is that is aware. What I'm trying to ask you is there any experiential evidence for the existence of a world, a body, or a mind independent of awareness? Because our culture, our world culture, is founded upon the belief that there is such a world, body, and mind. And yet nobody has ever found it. There is not one shred of evidence for the prevalent materialistic worldview that there is something called a world, a body, or a mind independent of awareness. It is everybody's experience, everybody without exception, that awareness is the primary fact of experience. It was here first. You can dance around that.
No.
That for as long as you like, but we can't. So why don't we start with our experience, not with our belief, not with what our culture and our scientists have told us, but start with your belief. What is your primary experience? What was there first in your experience? It's got to be awareness. Even if you were, as some people can, remember being inside, their bodies being inside their mother's womb, and they hear sound, rumbling sounds and everything. What was hearing that sound? Awareness must have been present.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So awareness was here first.
But if there wasn't a baby in there, a body with a brain in there, there would be nothing to experience anything. So we're still back at the same
but there
question.
would be no experience, and you presume from that that there is no awareness.
Correct.
Why couldn't it just be empty awareness, aware of itself? Why do you presume that awareness needs to have an object? I mean, if you were to empty out this room of all the objects, would the space necessarily disappear?
No.
No, the space would just remain empty space. Let's imagine now that this space was not a physical space, as it is, relatively speaking, but imagine that it was a knowing space. So all this space here, it can know, it can experience, okay? So this space is experiencing these words, the chairs, the everything, yeah? Now, and by definition, the space is experiencing itself, not as an object, but just by being itself, it knows itself, because its nature is knowing, yes? Now, what happens when all the objects, when all of us leave, when all the chairs leave, when everything goes? What happens to the space?
Nothing.
It ceases to know objects, but it doesn't cease knowing itself. Mm-hmm. Yes? Mm-hmm. Why couldn't awareness be like that? What happens when you're deeply asleep? Do you cease to exist? We don't even have to go there. What happens between two thoughts? Between two thoughts, there are no thoughts. Yes? What is there?
Presence.
How do you know? You're quite right, but how do you know?
Because my presence knows the presence.
You don't disappear when a thought disappears.
No.
You remain.
Yeah.
And what happens in that gap between two thoughts? You are there, but there are no thoughts there.
Sure.
You remain without objects. There it is. There's the answer to your question. You can exist with or without objects, quite happily. You, awareness, don't need the presence of objects, just like space doesn't mind whether this room is full of people or not. Its existence is totally independent of whether or not there are objects and people present.
But there's also a sense of it being my presence.
Okay.
I don't have a sense of your presence, other than that, I can see you as an object. I don't have a sense of your subjective presence. To me, awareness and presence has a subjective quality to it.
What do you think the experience of love is? When you feel love, what happens? When you fall in love or feel love, what happens between you and the other?
I know that you're going to say it's a dissolution.
No, but I want you to say what your experience is. But isn't it true that when we love or when we fall in love, we feel that whatever it is that separates us from one another sort of dissolves? We even popular language, when we first fall in love, when we're 13, 14, 15, 16, we feel we kind of merge with the other.
But there's still an element of that being a personal.
No, I know, but what I'm saying, what I'm suggesting, I'm putting out the question, could it be that the experience of love is the recognition that what we are is not separate?
It could be, yeah.
Doesn't it make sense?
Yeah, it could well be. And within that,
and
then
doesn't it make sense if you think, when we feel separate, what is it that the separate self longs for?
Wholeness.
Yes, happiness or love. In other words, when we feel that we are a separate, limited, located awareness, the one thing we long for, whether we call it peace or
the disappearance of that misery.
It's that misery is what?
Is mind activity, thinking it's a miserable separate self.
It's my feeling of being separate. That's why we love intimacy. That's why nearly all separate selves seek intimacy in relationship. What they're not, we don't really seek another person. What we long to do is to dissolve as a separate self. And that dissolution is brought about by in relationship. That's why we love intimacy. It's because what we love is to dissolve as a separate self. In fact, not to dissolve as a separate self, because we never really were a separate self. But what we long to is to know ourselves as we truly are.
And I get all that. I get the bit where the separate self disappears, that struggle ends, and whatever I was seeking, I realise, well, the suffering is within the seeking, and all of that. I get all that, and I get the peace, and I know that I am the peace, but there's still that gap.
Yes.
Would that peace be there if there wasn't a head on this body seeing that peace? See, I can get to the peace, but I can't get to the non-duality. I suppose that's what I'm saying.
You see, you often experience yourself in the absence of the body. You, awareness, I mean, what is your experience now of the body? You can't see it. It's just a sensation. That's all you know of your body is sensation. How long does a sensation last?
Of my body?
40 years? No, not a sensation of the body, just a sensation. Thought tells us it's a sensation of the body. In fact, it's just a sensation. How old is the current sensation?
Quite old.
No, how long has the present sensation been here?
Only since I checked back last as
Such
to whether
as
it was
the
there or
sensation that is generated by your hands on your face. How long has that sensation been present?
It's probably been there a while, but I've only just noticed it.
Let's say a minute.
As I've looked at it.
Let's say a minute.
Okay.
What about the sensation at the soles of your feet? Let's say half an hour.
Yeah.
Your bottom on the chair?
Same. Hour and a half.
Go to hour and a half. Okay. So all the sensations that are currently present, by the time you get home to bed tonight, they'll all be gone. Yeah? That's your only experience of the body. Temporary sensations. And they all appear and disappear. Do you, awareness, in your own experience of yourself, appear and disappear?
In deep sleep, I think I do.
You say, I think you do. Thought thinks that you do, yes. But what about you? Do you experience the disappearance of yourself in deep sleep? Do you, awareness, have the experience of the absence of yourself?
I have the experience of a mind and body that disappears,
okay, but that wasn't
and then
the
it
question.
suddenly comes into being.
That wasn't the question. We all have the experience of the mind and the body disappearing all the time. The question was, do you have the experience of yourself disappearing?
I don't know, because I'm not there to see that.
You're not. How do you know you're not there? You experience the absence of yourself?
No, but I don't experience the
Well,
presence
hang
of
on.
myself either.
If you say, I don't experience the absence of yourself, how do you know you weren't there?
I don't. But
You
I
don't-
also
exactly.
know I don't know that I was there either.
There you are. You say, I don't know. You don't know. You believe that you disappeared. The waking state mind tells you that you disappeared in deep sleep. That's just what the waking state mind said. The waking state mind is not present in deep sleep.
No,
It knows
sure.
nothing about deep sleep.
No, sure.
Don't ask it what it thinks about deep sleep. It wasn't there.
No.
And what is your experience? Do you ever have the experience of the absence of yourself? Go back to the question. Simple question. Do you ever have the experience of the absence of yourself?
No, and by definition I couldn't.
It's true by definition, but I want the answer from experience, not from definition. Is it your experience? Ask your experience. Do I ever have the experience? Don't think it out. Go to your experience. You're right, logically. But it's got to be more than just logic. Do I ever experience the absence of myself? It's yes or no.
No.
Perfect. Do you experience the absence of your body, which means the disappearance of sensations?
Yes.
Perfect. In other words, you, in your own experience of yourself, you are ever present. Sensations, sights, sounds are intermittent. They come and go. You have no experience of a permanent body or a permanent world.
But I still don't know that.
You do. You've just answered the question from your own experience.
I've answered it from my experience of being in a body-mind, but I still don't know that if I didn't have a body and a brain, whether there would be any awareness.
You're going back to the feeling of being in a body-mind. You are not in the body and the mind. The body and the mind wake up in you every morning. You're not in a body and a mind.
Okay, yeah, from that perspective.
Well, that perspective is the perspective of experience.
Okay.
In the morning, you don't wake up. Your awareness are always awake. The body wakes up in you. The sensations appear. Light appears. Sounds appear. The world wakes up in you. You don't wake up in a world. All I'm doing is just staying rigorously with experience.
No, I understand. And the experience is still my experience, and it's still a local experience. And that's where I came in with the initial question.
Yeah, each thought, sensation and perception is limited, is temporary, is local. But the stuff that it is made out of, in other words, when you're watching it's translated back into the metaphor of the movie. You're watching a movie, cars are driving down the street. From the left-hand side of the screen, a green car, okay, comes. The green car is limited. It's green, it's not blue, okay, and then it disappears. And then a red car comes. It's limited. It's separate, yes. But now, what is the stuff that the green and the red car, the limited cars, are made out of?
Seeing.
They're made out of the screen, in this metaphor. They're made out of the transparent screen. In other words, the limits that belong to the car, the green car and the red car, don't belong to the screen. The screen, the unlimited screen, the transparent screen, takes the shape of a limited appearance, but it never becomes limited itself. You awareness are like that. You awareness takes the shape of a limited thought. As a thought, you seem to be limited, but the stuff that thoughts are made out of is unlimited. Your perceptions, this perception of the room, it's a limited perception. It's the perception of a room in Hampstead. It's not your bedroom. The perception is limited, but the stuff that this perception is made of, which is pure knowing, is exactly the same unlimited stuff that the perception of your bedroom is made out of.
And I get all that.
Well,
I get all that.
Quite a lot to get.
But it still feels local. I get all that, but I don't get the non-duality bit. I don't get the bit that my awareness is the same as your awareness. That's my stumbling block. The rest of your logic I follow completely, and experientially too.
You see, it's not possible. Not only can I not convince you, and I can't, but thought cannot logically prove that awareness is unlimited. All it can only go as far as saying there is no evidence that it is limited.
No.
Now that is a big step, because our entire world culture, the founding belief of all 7 billion of us, is that what I am is identical to this. Almost everything we think and feel, and our subsequent activities and relationships, are undertaken on behalf of a limited self. Our entire world culture is based on that presumption. There is not one shred of evidence for it. So all thought can do is arrive at that conclusion. Now, having presumed all of your life that what we are was limited, having now seen that there's no evidence for it, it could be one or it could be the other. It could be limited or unlimited. Thought can't say. But having lived for so many years based on the presumption that what you are was limited, why don't you try an experiment?
And I do, and I do.
Try an experiment. Try saying, okay, I've lived for whatever it is, 40 years, based on the presumption that I am a temporary limited self. All my thoughts, my feelings, my relationships, my activities have been based on this presumption. Now I'm going to start an experiment. I'm going to stay close to my experience, which is that I find no limit in myself. So start with that. Forget the presumption that you are limited. Start with your actual experience and live the implications of that. I, awareness, never experienced the disappearance of myself, so presume that it never disappears. Presume that you were never born, that you don't grow old, and that you don't die. I, awareness, when I look around myself, I see no limit in myself. Doesn't it make sense to presume that there isn't one until you find that there is? Do that experiment. And it's the answer. I mean, literally do it. As you walk out of this room, take your stand as ever-present, unlimited awareness. Think in a way that is consistent with that. Feel in a way that is consistent with that. Act, perceive, and relate. And it is the answer you get in your experience, not just in your thoughts, but it's the answer that you get in your experience which will be the confirmation, or otherwise, of that possibility.
And would that be like in the form of peace?
I'm not going to tell you what it is, because it must be your experience. I could give it names.
Yeah.
But the experience, the response you get from people, from animals, from objects, from the world, that response will be the answer to your question. When you get that response from the world, and it's a living response, it doesn't just come in one kosher non-dual formulation. It comes as a living, moment-by-moment experience. When you feel it, ask yourself, what have I always longed for in my life? And if the answer is this response that I'm getting from the universe, then that is your confirmation.
Okay.